Good morning, everyone. It's, I believe this is on, yes. It is 9:30 in the morning. Our starting time is February 6, 2019. And it's the Peace River, Manasota Regional Water Supply Authority Board of Directors meeting. I believe we do have a quorum. And to start with, I want to note that Commissioner J.C. Dorizzo is here as an alternate for Elton Langford. And if you're able to, we'll do the invocation and the Pledge of Allegiance, so please rise.
Father God, we just thank you and praise you for bringing us all here together, Lord. We thank you for the honor and privilege it is to live in this great country. Lord, we ask you and we pray, Lord, for unity across our country in both purpose and mind, to continue to protect the helpless, Lord, to continue to provide for not only people here, but across the world. Lord, we ask for wisdom and discernment today in the board and all those here to be able to do your planning for this area, for water and water supply into the future. Lord, we praise you and we thank you for the blessings you placed on each one of us. And Lord, we also ask that you protect our military, our police and fire responders. Lord, we ask you to keep them safe this day and throughout this year. Lord, we also pray for a continued spirit throughout all of these meetings that we're having this year with all the politicians, that we come together, Lord, in a way to show your unity. And Lord, we ask you finally to keep us safe as we travel home from the meeting. We pray all this in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. I
pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, we'll go back to, we didn't do it last meeting because of time constraints, but we'll go back to our usual process of people identifying themselves. We'll start in this front row, if we would. Just tell us who you are.
Betsy Calder, reporter with the Sun.
Okay, the reporters go in a building 2 miles down. Just teasing.
I already went there.
Yes, ma'am.
Michelle Martin from Public Risk Insurance.
Okay, and let's go to the next row there.
Patrick Luce, consultant with Stantec.
Eric Grau, consultant with Stantec.
And Mike Burton, consultant with Stantec.
Let's just finish this side. Go right ahead.
Mark McNeil, ASRS.
Tom Gibble with Neighbors Giblet and Nickerson. We serve as bond counsel to the authority.
Don Ross, Earth Balance.
Tim Curran, AECOM.
Jennifer DeRocher, City of Northport.
Michelle Tipp, City of Northport.
Chris Tanner, Madison Bowles.
Heidi Maddox, Charlotte County.
Matt Couturier, Charlotte County.
Rick Arthur, Charlotte County.
Steve Adams, Punta Gorda.
Cole McLean, American Pipe. Bert Martinez, Purvis Gray, outside auditors.
Tiffany Mangold, Purvis Gray. Lizette Blunt, King Engineering. Dale Pearson with King Engineering. Addie Howard.
Eric Howard, Johnson Engineering.
Bubba Howard.
Jill Luke, Commissioner, City of Northport.
Libby Bowles, Congressman Grass Judy's office.
Sean Lewis, Punta Gorda. Water Authority. Tim Pittman, Peace River Water.
Donald Ward, Peace River Water.
Dennis Regassa, Southwest Florida Water Management District.
George McFarland, Sarasota County.
David Cash, Sarasota County.
Scott Schroyer, Sarasota County.
Gary Doolin, McLean, Duckville.
Nick Hayat, PNC Bank.
Phil Waller, Waller Consulting.
Neil Cumby, here with the Clark family.
Charles Clark.
Marilyn Miller, Charlotte County.
Morning, Greg Rudy, Charlotte County.
Alex Bugallo, Hilltop Securities. We serve as financial advisors to the board. Joel Kendall, Hilltop Securities.
Jim Guida, Progressive Water Resources.
Chris Sherritt, Progressive Water Resources.
Katie Gilmore, Manatee County.
Mark Simpson, Manatee County.
Ryan Messer, HDR.
Good morning, Terry Holcomb, the Authority.
Chris Rogers, Peace River Authority. Ford Ritz with the authority.
Mike Coates, the Water Supply Authority.
Richard Anderson, authority staff.
Kevin Morris with Authority staff.
Ann Lee with the Authority.
Well, thank you everyone for coming. And I do not know the lady that's the reporter. That was only me teasing you, so don't write a horrible article, please. We have, next we do some public comments, and we do have 2 speaker cards. Let's do those first, 3 minutes. Neil Comby, followed by Charles Clark. By the way, while they're making their way up here, if every person that we all come into contact with as elected officials are as nice to us as those 2 young people who attend our meetings and came up and chatted with us today, I'd run for re-election 80 times. It's not the case. Yes, sir.
Thank you. Thank you for giving us a few minutes to talk to you this morning. I'm about 115 miles from home. Does that make me an expert on anything?
You're everything.
Okay.
But just give us.
I thought it had to be over 200, but anyway.
Even though I just said your name, say your name again for us, please.
My name is Neil Comby, and I live in Polk County, Florida. And actually, Pat and I had a conversation a while back, a few months ago, that didn't go very far because of the lawsuit that was going on. Thought the timing wasn't quite right to talk about that. But I have been friends with the Clark family for probably about 40 years. Charles's dad, B.T. Clark, and my mother worked together. And Charles' brothers and I have worked together and been friends for a long time. There's an opportunity that we want you all to be aware of. We want to make sure that it's on the radar, that we think has potential for long-term benefits to the upper piece, the lower piece. And Charles is really the one that's going to talk about it. So I don't need all 3 minutes, so I'll settle for 1. And again, thank you all for giving us the time to be here this morning.
Well, thank you. And considering we have a barbecue, those 2 minutes are essential.
What time is the barbecue?
I don't know if that you're clear to have that notice. Okay? It's right after our meeting.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. For the record, my name is Charles Clark. I reside at 740 King Road, Frostbridge, Florida. I am the managing partner of Peace River Ranch LLC in Polk County. My objective today is to present some additional options, or an additional option for making, not making, you're not going to create it, but it will make available more drinking water in the Peace River Basin. Peace River Ranch is a 2,540 acre cattle ranch that is being operated on a reclaimed clay settling area located east of the Peace River at Homeland, Florida, and is adjacent to DEP property on the river. In July of 2017, a feasibility study was completed on the property using state funds. The objective of this study was to take water from the river during extremely high flow periods, holding it and releasing it during low flow periods to meet minimum daily flow levels. By leveling out these peaks and valleys, the number of days that water could be withdrawn from the river would be extended. Inundations of the river floodplains could still be accompanied by timing the releases in extremely high flow periods. All the water that flows past current intakes for drinking water can't be retrieved and is lost out to the ocean. Releases can be managed to maintain estuary salinity balance and keep saltwater intrusion from coming too far up the river by storing this water from the high flow periods. Also, rainwater outside of the diked areas. There's currently 1,250 acres that is already diked that could hold the water. The additional 1,300 acres could be used to collect the rainwater off that and pump it into the reservoir. You would gain, just off rainwater alone, 3.2 billion gallons of water when you figure the acre feet of water that come off that. In storing water, while there would be losses through evaporation, some of this could be offset by injecting some of this extra rainwater into the aquifer, creating credits to increase pumping out of existing wells. Some of the acreage could also be used as a filtration marsh to improve quality of water going to the river. Since this is a basin-wide problem, some of the funding for this project could come from multiple sources. Since it's adjacent to DEP property, there could possibly be funds derived from DEP, funds possibly from Southwest Florida Water Management District, the Florida Wildlife Commission through providing for the integrated wildlife habitats, possibly from DOT for mitigation, from road building projects, and from possibly conservation groups, Ducks Unlimited or someone along this might be able to help fund this project. Some of the benefits of this property: it's close to the river. The property is only about 200 yards from the river. It adjoins state-owned lands. We have 2 3/4 miles of frontage along the DEP property just off the river. There are existing dikes on the property of approximately 10 miles that encloses 1,200 acres. The balance of the property is bowl-shaped that retains much of the rainwater and flows primarily towards the diked area where it could be pumped and collected into the reservoir. Thank you for your time.
Well, thank you. Thank you both for making the trip here, and you're always welcome to come and talk to us.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We want to come on barbecue day. That's
Well,
barbecue every time you meet, or is it a special day?
it's a special occasion, because you were coming.
Thank you for listening to us. Wanted to make sure everybody's aware, looking for long-term solutions. And this one, it's not turnkey, but there's certainly a lot of advantages to this property. And I think that, you know, when I was in the legislature working with Speaker Chris Foley, we had this vision of creating small reservoirs all around the state. To me, I mean, I love the reservoir. I was on the governing board when we did the reservoir here. It's something I'm extremely proud of, and I think that is a long-term solution for Southwest Florida. So thanks again.
Thank you. And it'll be a great barbecue.
And a copy of that report is available. It's on PDF, and it can be accessed in other ways if you want to get a copy of it.
Actually, Pat's got it.
Mr. Chairman.
Yes, Pat.
Yeah, a few months ago, Mr. Company did give me a copy of that report, but as he said, we were a little bit at odds with Polk County, but now it's a new day, so we'll have conversations.
It's a good time to come and make sure you all are aware and get you information.
Oh, well, thank you both for coming.
Thank you.
Thanks, Pat.
I'm going to pass over to General Counsel Doug Manson, because we to talk to us about the election of officers today.
All right. So this is the typical place where we would do elections for the next year. I just wanted to give the board a couple options. Obviously, we could go forward and do the elections today, but traditionally we have an officer slot with a chair and vice chair. Vice chair at this point in time is Commissioner Langford, who is unable to be here today. So a second option we would have would be to go ahead and vote to postpone the election until our next meeting, when he could be here on April 3rd, and keep the officers in place until that meeting. So that's at your pleasure.
So move.
We got a vote. Well, the motion, I understand, would be to defer till the next meeting, Commissioner?
Yes.
Okay, I'll second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second to defer to the next meeting. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye, so we will do it at the next meeting, and Doug, you will lead us in that mission at the next meeting.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, Pat, are you going to help us with the resolutions and presentations?
Delegate that to Mr. Anderson.
Okay.
Hey, good morning, Mr. Chair, Richard Anderson and your staff. First award or first recognition, I would like to call Tim Pittman up here. Tim, if you come forward, as you can see, we love giving these awards, and the guys are equally thrilled. Look at the smile on his face. But Tim is a mechanic too with us. He's been here for 5 years. This is his 5-year service award. He started out at the sludge press, and he's worked his way up and is now a mechanic level 2 for us, which we appreciate all he does for us. He was born in Fort Pierce, but found his way home to Arcadia when he was a young man, and he's lived there ever since. Lives there with his wife Holly of 10 years. He's got 2 kids. His daughter Jade is 11, and his son Austin is 9. Tim's passion is hunting and fishing, and hunting and fishing. And luckily his daughter is a fisherman, and his son loves to hunt, so he's got it made, I think. Tim also likes to barbecue, but we're going to talk about that in just a minute. I'd like to say Tim is arguably our best mechanic at the facility. He can honestly fix anything that happens at the plant. He can work on it. He's not afraid to try and get in there and keep things running for us. And Tim, we appreciate your service and all your hard work with us, and thank you for the first 5 years of many more. So. There is?
Yeah, there is.
Oh, okay, there we go. All right, the next recognition is kind of lighthearted and some fun, but I'd like to recognize these 3 guys in the back. If they'd come forward, we've got Sean Lewis, again, Tim Pittman, and Donald Morton. The American Water Works Association every year at their fall conference has a barbecue competition. These guys came to me about 4 years ago and said, hey, Richard, we'd like to get in this competition and cook. So I checked with Pat, and he said, sure, let's go for it. So they set out, they built their own smoker, which is out back, currently producing smoke, and put the thing together. They've been competing for the last 4 years. Each year they've gotten better and better. This year they won first place in pulled pork and second place in chicken, which gave them the honorary Grand Champion Award. Beating out the likes of, Charlotte County was also one of the competitors. But actually last year they did very well. They got first place in chicken in 2017. So it's lighthearted fun, but it's a great morale thing for utilities and for consultants. And we just want to thank you guys for representing the authority and appreciate it, and hope you win next year. So, thank you.
Would they like to say anything?
Would you like to say anything?
No.
So they're ready to get out of here and go back.
We got a cooking to do.
Would you like anything to say?
We just had fun doing it.
Yeah.
Just thank you.
We appreciate it.
Enjoy
Thanks again.
Thank you.
We're now on the consent agenda, items 1 through 8 on the agenda. We'll take a motion. Commissioner Dougherty.
Commissioner, Mr. Chairman, I need to pull item 8.
Okay. So
I'll move the balance of the consent if there's no one else.
Second.
Okay.
On the balance of the consent.
Motion by Commissioner Dougherty, second by Commissioner Trace for items 1 through 7. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. So 1 through 7 passes unanimously. We're on number 8, Commissioner Dougherty.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. It's related to the note for the acquisition of the property at Lakewood Ranch. As you recall, at our last meeting, I per the direction of our board, voted no on that particular acquisition. However, we saw this item on this agenda and had some questions. I think I've received the answers to just about all of them, but I thought for the record, because there was significant discussion at our meeting, I thought that it would be helpful to get on the record exactly why we're doing it this way. Basically, our discussion was along the lines, what was a subordinate taxable revenue note, very basically. The heart of the question, I guess, really the discussion at our meeting was, why weren't we just going for a regular mortgage and securing that loan with the property that was being acquired, like we would normally do in a commercial or residential type acquisition. So that's basically what I would ask, and I think Mr. Manson's prepared to give a brief explanation. I have received it already, but I just wanted it for the record.
No, that's perfect. Mr. Manson?
Yes. So briefly, and understand we have in the room experts if we need to go into more detail. but governments can't put a lien or a mortgage on property that they own, so we're prohibited from doing that. So what this does is it's basically a revenue note, but and all the strange language that you see in the recommended action part is, bond lawyer kind of language. So the bottom line is this is a note subordinate to all of our bondholders. So after we paid all the bondholders and all our bond stuff, then they have a right to the revenue beyond that. And the reason why it's not a mortgage is for what we discussed earlier, which is the idea that we're prohibited from putting mortgage on a specific piece of property. So the idea is we do it off of net revenues after we paid all the bonds and indebtedness that we have to bondholders.
A lien can be placed on the net revenue.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep.
That's where the confusion came from, I think. You can do liening one way, but not.
It's loose language, you're right. I mean, the thinking is, when you think of a mortgage, you think of a lien on property, you think of foreclosure. When you're thinking of, in effect, this is like if you had a line of credit, not secured by anything. But yes, they can obviously put a lien on your salary or whatever to recover their money.
If I can continue, one other question,
Sure.
Mr. Chairman.
Absolutely.
One other commissioner had a question concerning just the fundamental acquisition of the property, recognizing that there's a tenant involved, we're not using the entire building. Is that something that's authorized by the authority to be able to do, to actually be a landlord, so to speak?
Yes, specifically in the language that we have in an interlocal agreement, which is mimicking the language in 163.01, and then also our other founding document, 373.1962, we're allowed to lease and be a lessor. And so, yes, that is within our authority to lease properties.
Anything else, Commissioner Dower?
No, sir. I still, though, I will be obligated to vote no on this item, but I appreciate all the information this morning. Thank you.
Okay, we'll have we're on item number 8 of the consent agenda. We need a motion and
I
a
move
second.
that we accept as written,
Okay,
number 8.
We have a motion on item number 8 in the affirmative from Commissioner Trace.
Second.
Commissioner DeRisso seconds it. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Anyone opposed?
No.
Chair votes aye. That motion, item number 8 on the consent agenda, passes 3-1. We are now moving on to the regular agenda, and item number 1 is water supply conditions.
Morning again, Mr. Chair. Richard Anderson for the record.
Richard,
Yes.
I'm just watching you all when you get up there, and it looks like the corner of the TV is going to bang you in the head, so just be careful. We don't want you to miss the barbecue. Yeah.
As long as Pat doesn't get up here.
Yeah.
Okay, here we go. All set. As you said, water supply conditions is item number 1. This is information item only. We're going to look at the water supply conditions through the month of January, and then the production from all of our facilities for the month of December. The winter El Nino traditional rain pattern is holding true to form. We're seeing the storm fronts coming through every 2 to 3 to 4 weeks, which has kept the rainfall fairly consistent for us. We've had rainfall, November was 3.1, December 5.4. At the time of the graphic being done, we'd only had about 0.6 in January, but we wound up way up here at about 3.4 inches of rain in January because of those fronts that came through about 10 days ago. So in a period where we normally get 5 to 6 inches, we've had 12 inches of rain. So we're doing very well on the river flows and the supply availability. So, as far as, like I mentioned, the river flow, well above the minimum 130 CFS where we are allowed to take water. We've been up over 1,000 CFS for most of January, and we'll continue to stay there. As of today, we're right about 1,000 CFS, which if we had someplace to put the water, we could withdraw up to 120 million gallons today if we had someplace to put it. But as you'll see, we're completely full here. River withdrawals, again, we're just maintaining. We're taking out what we're using on a day-to-day basis just to meet demands. For December, we took out about 26 MGD, and for January through the 20th, when this was put together, about 25 MGD. Wound up the end of January withdrawing about 30 MGD average from the river to keep the system full. Surface water storage, as I mentioned, we are completely full. We're right at 6.8 billion gallons combined storage in Reservoir 1 and Reservoir 2. So we're as full as we can get right now. Again, same situation with ASR. We've been in storage mode since about the end of October. We are sitting at 7.8 billion gallons in the ASR system. And looking at the weather and the way the river's flowing, we don't expect to have to utilize that resource as we move into the drier season here in the springtime. So hopefully we're going to remain topped off in that system as well. Combined storage, this is the picture for both systems. As I said, 6.8 in the surface water system, 7.81 in the ASR, giving us over 14.5 billion gallons, 14.6.
We have Commissioner Tower.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yes, sir.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification, Richard, I think, and just a request, I guess, is that, of course, we're in excellent shape right now. I'm assuming these volumes are calculated volumes using the entire cross-section of these facilities. And Mike, you and I have had this conversation before. Is it possible to give us a number, every meeting about the net usable amounts in the reservoir? In other words, we probably would never draw the reservoirs down to the bottom of the facility. So, what would be a realistic actual usable amount in the reservoirs, and the same with ASR. And then how does that calculate using our total 34.7 MGD for the total allocation? How many months does that really equate to? We kind of had that discussion before in that last workshop. If that's possible, if it's valuable information to you all,
Sure.
it could be kind of...
Yeah, I could work with Mike and come up with a new slide for you. So.
I think we have consensus that we'd like to see that number.
Kind of gives us a real number, sir.
That's perfect.
Thank you very much.
And at the risk of insulting every engineer in the room, only an engineer would ask that question, and we thank you for it.
And just to answer specifically, the ASR volume is metered water that goes through a meter, and so we have actual quantities that are going into the ground. The surface water system, as you said, is calculated based on surface area and so forth. So. Okay, now let's take a look at the demand side of the region. For December, the authority delivered 26 MGD. York County and city facilities delivered about 46.5 MGD. Total was 69 MGD for the region. 3.5 of that was delivered by Manatee County to their consecutive customers, leaving about 65.5 MGD going to the authority members and customers. Charlotte County for the month of December used about 9.9 from the authority, or 61% of their allocation. They produced about 500,000 from the Bird Store facility. Total was 10.4 MGD, or utilized about 54% of their available capacity. For DeSoto County, they took about 0.58 from the authority and produced 0.32 from the DeSoto Correctional Facility for a total of about 0.9 MGD, or 63% of their available capacity. Manatee County supplied 31.2 to their customers within their service area, exported another 4.5 to Sarasota County, again another 3.5 to their consecutive customers, for a total production at the plant of 39.24, or 75% of their permitted capacity at the facility. For Sarasota County, Sarasota purchased about 12.5 MGD from the authority, imported again 4.5 from Manatee County. They self-supplied about 2.75 from their facilities, a total of 19.9, or 59% of your available capacity. And finally, the City of Northport. City of Northport took almost 3 MGD for the month of December from the authority. They self-supplied about 0.3 for a total of 3.14, or 51% of their available capacity. And on a region-wide basis, we showed the water year 2018. Last time we averaged 69.58 as a region for the year. The 12-month running average, which goes through December, January, actually this would be the calendar year, almost the same, 69.53 MGD. And with that, that leaves us, again, we produced 69.15 as a region, leaving 35.5 available capacity. Total utilization was 66%. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions? Okay, well, thank you. We're on item number 2 of the regular agenda, Solar Together and FP&L Shared Solar Program.
And you're stuck with me once again.
Oh, that's fine. There you go.
Okay. Mr. Chair, item 2 is also an information item only. I'm not requesting any action. We're only bringing you the details of a new program that's being proposed by Florida Power and Light. It's called Solar Together, and it is currently being offered to their existing large-scale commercial and industrial customers. FP&L has made investments, and they continue to make investments in what they call large-scale solar projects around their service territory. Currently, those projects are in the 75 megawatt or smaller range, which most of them actually are right at 75 megawatts. As I mentioned, this is a new program. It's not been approved by the PSC, it's just proposed at this point, and it allows existing customers like us to invest in and share the benefits of some of these large-scale 75 megawatt solar projects that they are developing. So how does the project, or how does the proposal work? The customer, as I said, is making an investment in FPL's solar program. So there is a cost component. The customer selects their solar subscription quantity, and that can range anywhere from 100 kilowatts up to the maximum, and in our case, that's 9,500 kilowatts. Once they make that selection or their level of commitment in the program, then a monthly solar subscription fee is established by contract. And again, this is pending PSC approval. You're going to hear me say that again and again, but it's not a done deal yet as far as any of the final numbers in the program. So once that subscription fee is established, that is fixed for the life of the program. It is fixed for as long as you're a participant in the program, even for 30 years. It is a flat monthly fixed fee. On the benefits side, those come in the form of monthly solar credits. Those credits begin immediately. The first month you make your investment payment or your subscription payment, you also receive a solar credit. Again, the solar credits are still being negotiated, and they're pending PSC approval. But what they're proposing is the credit will increase by approximately 1% annually for the life of the program. So what I have here is an example from FP&L of what the estimated bill impact would be if we were to enter the program. Excuse me, these graphs go out 10 years. Again, this is an estimate of the first 10 years of the program. As you can see, the gray bars represent the investment cost or the subscription rate. The green bars represent the benefit or the credit that you would receive on the bill. The first year, we would see, as I said, the investment, we would see a net increase in our bill of about $26,000. The next year, a little bit less, about $17,000. The next year, about $9,000. And then finally, by year 4, the benefits equal the subscription rate or the subscription charge. So if you look down below to the corresponding years on the bottom graph, again, we're investing $26,000. It increases to about $42,000. then $53,000. And as I said, year 4 was neutral, so that remains the same. As you move into year 5, you start outpacing, the benefits start outpacing the cost of the program, so you start recouping your investment. Where you get to year 7, you achieve simple payback in the program, where you've actually recouped all of your cost and your investment in the program. As you move through to year 10, they're estimating the net annual benefit would be around $54,000 a year. Cumulatively, so for the first 10 years, if you add up years 8, 9, and 10, we would see a net benefit of $135,000 total cumulatively in the program. So what's the current status? Where are we right now? We are in the pre-registration process of this program. That means we have reserved our place in line. We've committed to FP&L that we want to participate in the program should the PSC approve it under the same terms and conditions that they propose. Why do they do that? Well, it allows FP&L to better understand customer interest, how many people want to participate. They don't want too many participants, that would dilute the return on investment. They don't want too few, they wouldn't generate enough revenue to keep the program going. So they want to make sure it's right-sized to meet their needs. This also provides them the data they need to the PSC to make sure they are asking for the correct numbers when they file for the approval from PSC. Again, it allows interested customers like us to reserve our spot in the program should we choose to stay in. However, we can opt out following PSC approval if we decide as an agency that it is not favorable to us to participate. Should either the costs increase or the benefits decrease, either one, it doesn't have to be both, we have the option under contract to get out without penalty and pay no penalty. So there is an out clause that lets us get out of it without any penalty should we decide it's not economically in our interest to go forward with this. So what are the next steps? As I said, we're in the pre-registration process right now. That closed on January 25th. They expect the PSC filing and approval process to take most of this year. They're looking at the end of October to achieve approval from the PSC Commission. Once they achieve that, they will begin signing up interested customers and parties. Then they expect to roll the program out with the first billing cycle being March of 2020, so about 13 months from now. So last year, you had a workshop in Charlotte County back in April of 18. Mr. Morris presented a suite of possible solar options to you that range from a small 0.2 megawatt pilot facility up to partnering with FP&L on one of these similar 75 megawatt facilities. Those all required capital investment, either being equipment or land on the RV Griffin or both. And also many of them included an ongoing O&M cost that would be borne by the authority to maintain the investment. Your direction in April was to put solar on the back burner, but to continue to monitor it, which is what we're here with today. This program, we feel, again, has no upfront capital cost to the authority. There's no long-term contract. We can opt out in year 1 or year 30 at our discretion. The renewable credits don't really apply to us, but if those ever came into play, we would have renewable energy credits to bargain with. Again, you receive the bill credits immediately. At the same time, you start paying for the subscription fee. And there are no restrictions on other solar investments. Should some of these programs that Kevin highlighted before become more favorable, or we wish to pursue other options that come, available to us in the future, we're not prohibited from entering into any other solar programs whatsoever. So there's no restrictions. On the economic side, again, this is a very good payback period for a solar project. Between 5 and 7 years is excellent. The fixed monthly subscription rate is a fixed for the duration of the contract, but the bill credits do escalate. And again, there's no maintenance, operational costs to the authority. All costs to maintain the equipment is borne by FP&L. Our only cost is the monthly subscription rate fee that we would pay. And again, no penalty to leave the program. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if you had any for me on this.
Yeah, I have a few, but I'll go last. Any, Mr. Dowery?
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I guess the process, has it begun yet, Richard? They filed their petition?
I don't know if they filed a petition. This chart that they provided us says the petition would be filed March 1st. I don't know, but they're in the process. Again, they've closed the window to adding new customers, and they're preparing the paperwork to do that.
Do we know if there's places along the pathway, milestone dates, where the PSC will have workshops or hearings on this or anything like that, except for the end of the ride there in October?
I do not know that at this time. I can find out.
I think
for
it
you.
would be interesting to keep track of that, Pat, and see if we can stay on top of it, so that, because it looks like we'd have to go no-go at the December 4th meeting. It would seem to me that's where we're heading.
If the dates hold as true, I would say that's right. Yes, sir.
Very good. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Any other questions? Well, the one that I had, you sort of answered it. When the PSC finishes with this, then it's our opportunity to do a go, no-go, and that will come to the board for a vote.
Yes, I assume Pat. Yes.
Good. Okay. No other questions? Thank you very much.
Okay, great. Thank you.
We're on item number 3, ASR operations permit application update. And I will say that for a little over 2 years, I've signed most of the checks, and our power bill is a big check every month.
And I didn't say this, but the 54,000 would represent about 3.5% savings on the electric bill, so it's not insignificant. So.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, board members. It's Mike Coates and your staff. Item number 3 is an update on the progress of our application to renew and modify our operating permit for the ASR system at this facility. This map shows the facility site and the ASR wellfield locations. Wellfield 2 over here on the other side of Kings Highway, adjacent to reservoir number 1, and wellfield number 1, which is dispersed over here around the plant site. We have 21 wells in this system, 21 production wells, 24 monitor wells. This is the largest ASR system in Florida. Now, the operating permit that we have for this facility actually expired in April of 2018. And we filed a timely renewal permit for that. We filed the application in February. And what we requested in the application was to be able to use, at our option, fully treated drinking water to recharge the system like we do now, or partially treated water from the reservoir. When I say partially treated, I mean we would just filter it and put it into these wells. Now, we ran a pilot test program out here for approximately a year in a couple of wells in Wellfield 2. And what we determined was that it appears to be feasible at this site, this partially treated water option. And the benefit of that is that the way we recharge the system now is with fully treated drinking water going in. When that water comes back out again, it goes into the reservoir system and it's retreated. So it's an expensive storage option. Mr. Anderson indicated that we've got almost 8 billion gallons of fully treated water in the ground right now. That cost us about $6 million. That's $6 million we've got sitting underground. By contrast, what we have in the reservoir system cost us about 5 cents a thousand to put in there. It's $300,000 of water in the reservoir system. So there's a big dichotomy in the reservoir and ASR operation. The cost of those. So this would be a big benefit to us if we could do it safely in this area. Now, we submitted the permit application back in February. We've had a number of meetings with the DEP. We've submitted a bunch of additional information to them. They deemed the application complete in October, and I fully expected to come to the board today and say, hey, we got a permit. But we don't. Apparently the wheels of the permitting process turn slowly. The DEP has told us they have to meet with the EPA to discuss this and other ASR options that they're dealing with out in the state. And so, what I have to report to you today is we're still waiting. I did expect to have some additional news to talk to you today about this, but I really don't. Until that meeting takes place, the DEP is not going to act on this permit, and I don't know when the meeting is going to take place. So right now, we're operating under the old permit. No problem with that. We can do what we have been doing for years out here. But we'll just have to wait and have that meeting with the EPA and see what they say. We'll keep you posted on it. That's it. If you have any questions, I'd be glad to answer those.
Do we have any questions on this? Yes, Commissioner Gowry.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just a clarification, Mike, is who's taking the lead for us in the discussions with DEP and EPA?
Pardon?
Who's taking the lead?
Well, we are not involved in those discussions. We've not been
It's just
invited to
DEP with EPA
It's
directly.
DEP and EPA. They're talking about policy issues, and not necessarily, it isn't just this policy issue, it's other policy issues as well that they deal with.
Okay.
This, in fact, this ASR permitting process is a federal program that's administered by the DEP. And so they're kind of like the Army Corps of Engineers, and there's no time frame for when they issue a permit. They issue a permit.
I understand. I'm sorry.
That's fine. Oh, Commissioner Trace.
Just to kind of let you know, I'm still very opposed to putting non-treated water down in the ground. I have no problem with us trying to see what the state says on it, but still, I'm not sure 1 or 2 years research is quite enough.
Okay, any other questions? All right, thank you.
All right, thank you.
We're on item number 4, fiscal year 2018 comprehensive annual financial report and the independent auditor's report. Ann is stepping up there to give us an extremely detailed summary of what we're facing.
Good morning, Mr. Chair, members of the board, and Lee of your staff, and I'll be presenting on the FY18 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report and Independent Auditor's Report. At the authority, we are continually striving to elevate our standards, and as such, for fiscal year 18, we chose to present our financials as part of a comprehensive annual financial report, commonly known as a CAFR. As this is the first time our agency has completed a CAFR, I wanted to begin by reviewing what a CAFR is and the information it contains. So first off, what is a CAFR? A CAFR is a detailed presentation of the agency's financial condition and is intended to give a reader a wide variety of information in order to assist in the understanding of the basic financial statements. Report is regulated by standards set forth by GASB and consists of 3 sections. The introductory section, which has the basic information regarding the agency's agency structure and purpose. The financial section, which presents the agency's basic financial statements and independent auditors' reports. And the statistical section, which provides a broad range of financial indicators and trends over the last 10 years. Lastly, there is a certificate program offered through the GFOA, which is the Government Finance Officers Association, the CAFR program, which is called the Certificate of Achievement for Excellence in Financial Reporting. This program was established in 1945 and is intended to encourage and assist agencies prepare CAFRs that evidence the spirits of transparency and full disclosure, and then recognize the individual governments that succeed in achieving that goal. With board approval, it is our intent to submit the FY18 CAFR to the certificate program. Over the following few slides, I will review the financial highlights and statements presented within the CAFR. Please keep in mind that the financial statements presented here are in draft form pending changes related to GASB 68, which is the net pension liability statement for FRS that most of you guys have to deal with. As well, they don't release the actuary reports until mid to end January, so it does take us some time to do those calculations, which is why it's in draft form as it has been in previous years. The figures presented in red throughout the presentation will be the ones affected by this adjustment, and these statements will be presented in summary form, and they will be also found within the management's discussion and analysis portion on the CAFR, which starts on page 21. We did also believe originally that we would have a liability associated with GASB 75, which is a new statement that went into place this year related to other post-employment benefits other than pension. It's a long one. Specifically related to the implicit rate subsidy therein, but when we received the actuary report for that last week, the amount was deemed trivial by the authority and our auditors, but there will still be changes in the governance letter and in note 1 of the financial statements. The statement of net positions presented here is using the accrual method of accounting and presents the same information as a balance sheet. It assesses the balance of the authority's government assets and against its liabilities. For FY18, the authority's assets and deferred outflows of resources exceeded its liabilities and deferred inflows of resources by $129,312,701, which is our net position. A substantial portion of this net position, about 76.8%, reflects the net investment in capital assets. In other words, the investment of capital assets net of related debt. The statement of revenues, expenses, and changes in net fund position is also prepared using the accrual method of accounting and presents the same information as you would see in a profit and loss statement. The charges for services increased by $76,000 and operating grants and contributions increased by about $30,000 from 2017 to 18 as budgeted. Capital grants and contributions net in 2018, which includes capital grants from the DEP and SWIFMUD towards the Phase 1 and Phase 3B pipelines, decreased by a little over $1 million as budgeted. Expenses increased by roughly $957,000 or 2.5% from 17 to 18. The increases in expenses were due to the following. The cost of sales and service increased by roughly $569,000. The increase was due to several large renewal and replacement projects that were completed but not depreciable, such as the stormwater system improvements, as well as increased labor and legal costs that were partially offset by decreased laboratory and environmental service costs. Depreciation expense increased by $417,000, administration costs increased by $57,000, and these increases were slightly offset by a decrease in interest expense of $98,000. The authority's investment in capital assets as of September 30th, 2018 totaled $248,834,302 net of accumulated depreciation. The investment in capital assets includes lands, easements, structures, leasehold improvements, furniture, equipment, and construction in progress. The book value of these assets decreased by $9.7 million during 2018. Additions were $2.952 million, and depreciation was $12.5 million. Additions during 2018 included the completion of $697,000 of renewal and replacement projects, $203,000 of vehicles, machinery, and equipment, and over $2 million of construction in progress.
Ken, could you
Yes,
go
sir.
back to that slide? Just to make a point that should be obvious. The capital assets are decreasing because this number is net of depreciation.
Yes, sir.
So it'll
And our
continue.
depreciation is over $12 million every year.
Okay.
The authority's bonded debt outstanding as of September 30th totaled over $142 million. These bonds are secured by the net revenues pledged in the master water supply contract, and the long-term debt decreased by $2.585 million during the year due to scheduled principal payments. Under the authority's budgetary process, rates are established to provide adequate coverage for existing and planned additional debt. This is demonstrated by the authority's debt coverage and county debt service coverage ratios, which are both indicators of the authority's financial strength. As indicated by this table, here, the authority consistently maintains coverage ratios well above the requirements. Due to the authority's ample long-term water supply, favorable financial condition, and budget policies, in August 2018, Fitch upgraded our rating from AA- to AA. With that, I'd like to introduce Tiffany Manville, CPA, who will be going over the independent auditor's report.
And again, if I may,
Yes,
just
sir.
the bottom right-hand corner, that number, that's our county debt service coverage, 2.56 times the requirement.
Yes, sir, and we only require a 1.
Thank you.
Good morning, I'm Tiffany Mangold, Audit Manager at Purvis Gray & Company, and I have with me today Senior Audit Manager Bert Martinez. We're your external auditors. It's our responsibility to express an opinion on your financial statements based on our audit. We've issued a clean, unmodified opinion. That's the highest level of assurance you can receive from an audit, which means that your financial statements are fairly stated in all material respects. We do not issue an opinion on the management's discussion and analysis, introductory section, or statistical section of your CAFR. We noted no instances of fraud or illegal acts. We had no changes to our planned scope of the audit during year-end fieldwork, and no material uncertainties noted. There were no changes in accounting policies during the year. There was one new GASB standard, which Ann touched on earlier, GASB statement number 75, which is accounting and financial reporting for OPEB. This statement requires that employers report their total OPEB liability and related deferred inflows and outflows on the statement of net position. In connection with implementation of this standard, the authority contacted its actuary to perform a valuation for the September 30th, 2018. Based on that measurement, the liability related to the authority was trivial, so it wasn't required to be reported. And this whole standard is similar to GASB 68, which is the FRS standard, where you had to add all those schedules and additional note disclosures and RSI. Our opinion's not modified in respect to this matter, so we're still issuing a clean opinion. Everything's fine. We did add a paragraph to the governance letter, so you'll see that in the final reports once you come out. And note 1 of the financial statements, as Ann mentioned earlier. Some favorable audit conclusions to report is that there was no significant or unusual transactions noted. There were no alternative methods discussed with management, and we considered management's communication with those charged with governance to be in line with common best practices. In regards to the governance letter, this is a technical report designed for audit committees. So quickly it states that there were no adjustments detected as a result of the audit process, meaning that you can rely on your financial statements that you receive throughout the year and that they're fairly stated. There were no material past adjustments. The financial statement disclosures are neutral, consistent, and clear. We had no disagreements with management, and there were no difficulties encountered during the audit. And once again, we've issued a clean, unmodified opinion. I think Ann did a good job with this CAFR. She really worked hard putting it together and getting it up to standard. She followed the GFOA CAFR checklist and made sure that she had all the requirements in there. And it's going to be a certification that you'll be happy to receive. We want to take this opportunity to thank Ann and Pat and their team for helping to make this a smooth audit process. And with that, I'd be happy to take any questions you might have. And there's a motion. I'm sorry.
First, questions?
Sure.
Seeing none, we have a motion up on the board that'll be required. Commissioner Dowery.
Mr. Chairman, I move approval of a regular agenda item number 4 as recommended by staff.
Second.
Motion on item number 4 by Commissioner Dougherty, seconded by Commissioner Trace. Any discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Is anyone opposed? Chair votes aye. Number 4 on the regular agenda moves forward with approval 4-0. And thank you to our auditor and Ann. You always do a wonderful job for us. And because of that, we now have item number 5, which is the budget process for fiscal year 2020.
Again, Ann Lee and your staff, for the record, I'll be presenting on the FY 2020 budget process. There we go. Each of you represent your respective constituents to ensure their needs are met, but are also tasked to oversee water supply on a broader regional perspective. The residents throughout the 4 counties work, shop, and play crisscrossing political boundaries. Our economy and quality of life extends beyond each of your jurisdictions. While there is diversity throughout the region, there is a common thread that brings us together on water supply: the necessity of reliable, environmentally sustainable, and affordable water supply for our residents' economic recovery and growth. These common threads are mirrored in the mission and vision statements of the authority, and these principles help guide us during the budget process. Here is the budget schedule. As you can see, we have a thorough budget process that takes staff, administrators, and board input throughout the process. It is our intent to bring the tentative budget for FY20 back to you for approval in April, and then the final budget hearing would be on July 31st. Historically, our total budget has varied somewhat through the last 5 years, and the variance is primarily due to CIP, which is in the light purple. The operations portion of our budget has only increased by roughly 5% over the last 5 years. Per the authority's guiding documents, we draft the budget to be able to meet our contractual obligations of 34.7 MGD, as well as expected delivered quantities as provided annually by our customers. Here you can see the average MGD delivered for years 15 through 18, as well as the requested quantities for FY19. The authority has a plethora of guiding documents, including federal regulations, Florida statutes, the Master Water Supply Contract, bond documents, and guidance and direction received from you, the board. In terms of our bonds, the authority has 5 outstanding bond issuances with an original issuance amount of $149 million. Due to the authority's ample long-term water supply, favorable financial condition, and policies, the authority was granted stable outlook rating from all 3 rating agencies in conjunction with the 2015 bonds. And as I mentioned in the last presentation, in August 2018, Fitch upgraded our rating of AA- to AA. So what are the principles that guide our budget? First, we must meet the master water supply obligations of 34.7 MGD. We must meet our customer demand projections, plan for long-term water demands, invest appropriately to maintain our current infrastructure. We must also maintain our financial stability and bond ratings, and strive to maintain reasonable water rates both now and into the future. The authority is a single enterprise fund that's broken into 2 cost centers. The Administrative Cost Center, which comprises of the Lakewood Ranch Administrative Office and focuses on executive management, finance, administration, and engineering, and the Facilities Cost Center, which comprises of the facilities, operations and maintenance, technical services, and construction services. For the preparation of the FY20 budget, we have 4 main areas that we will review in order to present a conservative budget. In terms of operating issues, we currently anticipate an increase in treatment costs associated with power and materials. We are soliciting bids right now for 3 treatment chemicals and will have the results prior to the April board meeting. In terms of administrative issues, we are currently evaluating our staffing needs, as well as finalizing the transition of the ownership of the Lakewood Ranch Administrative Building, which is set to close on Monday. We will review budget priorities, which includes a review of policies to see if they're still relevant today, how we can improve them, and if we should have additional policies. We also seek to prioritize funding for through R&R to maintain our existing infrastructure funding for CIP projects and continued implementation of the street treatment plan. Last but not certainly least, we will review our CIP initiative by updating the 5-year CIP and 20-year CNA plan. This just turned off. Oh, sorry, this podium TV just turned off, so I can't see. I don't know what's going on here.
Why you looked at me?
Well, because it's your computer thing. Oh, there we go. Sorry.
I got it back.
Thank you, Richard. Andy needs new glasses. I can't read that there. All right, where was I? Oh, okay. We review our CIP initiative by updating the 5-year CIP plan and 20-year CNA plan. We will continue the process of defining common benefit projects, as well as identifying funding sources. On the previous slide, I briefly touched on the policies that we review in conjunction with the budget. The matrix before you shows our current budget policies as highlighted in green. This group of policies establish reserve accounts and guidance on their use and replenishment. And as this group of policies was used in conjunction with our bond ratings and are part of our bond documents, we do not recommend any revision to these policies. The next policy, as highlighted in yellow, is regarding the member contribution, which is now 10 years old. This policy is how the Administrative Cost Center's budgeted annual expenses are paid by the members, and currently the member fees are calculated based on a rate of 50% of the contribution that is equally distributed between the members, and 50% is charged to each member proportionately to the respective county's population to the region's population on a whole. The last group of policies highlighted in pink are items for which we recommend policies be created for. This would include the common benefit project funding and water rate indexing that will be discussed in more detail in the next presentation, as well as a new fund for emergency disaster relief. This disaster relief fund is recommended to hold the insurance deductible as it relates to the authority's property policy to ensure that should a catastrophic event occur, we have the funds readily available to quickly file the claim and pay the deductible. In terms of expenditures, the largest part of our budget is related to projects, followed closely by O&M costs. The balance of our expenditures are related to debt service, county payments, and other costs such as the debt service coverage payment. In terms of revenues, the majority of our funding comes from water sales, and the balance is from CIP reserve funds, as well as funds that are brought forward from the previous budget year, and other funding sources such as member fees, planning assessments, and interest earnings. Our water rate is established by resolution and is comprised of a base rate charge and the water use charge, which is the actual metered use. The base rate is comprised of debt costs, which is charged by project participation, and the fixed O&M, which is charged in accordance to the water allocation. Here are the current authority water allocations, with Sarasota and Charlotte County taking the majority and Northport and DeSoto County taking smaller portions. Historically, our base rate has gradually increased at a rate of less than 2% per year. And impressively, our water use charge has remained the same at 74 cents per 1,000 gallons for the last 7 years. In conclusion, the budget process starts with our discussions today and feedback from the board regarding budget priorities. It will involve meetings between the authority staff and your staffs, and we will bring a draft budget back to you for further review and direction in April. We also seek feedback from external agencies and the public. Thank you for your time, and I'd be more than happy to answer any questions.
Do we have any questions for Ann? Okay.
Mr. Just a thought, it kind of will roll into, I guess, the next presentation a little bit too. They integrate pretty well together. I can see and we'll know better after the next presentation, but there may be some value to actually having a special meeting or a workshop on the budget. I mean, these items, Pat, or these policies are enormous, and I know you've got an administrator-managers meeting on the 22nd of February. I think, Mr. Chairman, we might be better served trying to, in between that meeting and the April 3rd meeting, try to figure out a day we can sit down and exclusively drill down on this, on the tentative budget, that's all. Because there's things in here that will be difficult to vote on, even on a tentative basis, maybe on April 3rd if we don't do that. That's my thoughts.
Well, what do the other board members feel? I would agree to a special meeting.
Work out of time.
That's right, that's always the challenge, yeah.
All right, we've got consensus on that. And thank you very much. We're on item number 6 of the regular agenda, CIP funding update and discussion. I think, Mike, you're going to help us with that.
Yes, good morning, Mr. Chair, board members, Mike Coates, again to your staff. Regular item number 6 is a continuation on the discussions we've been having about how to fund authority CIP projects, how to classify certain projects like common benefit projects, and agency policy on new connections to the regional system. We have with us today the folks who are going to be doing the heavy lifting, at least on this item, Mike Burton and Eric Grau with Stantec. Stantec is the authority's rate consultant. Now, if you recall from the December 5th meeting, these are the next steps that were outlined from that meeting. And Eric and Mike are going to walk through these with you. They're going to talk about the January 9th meeting that we had with the professional staff and your rate consultant. So we got a lot of good information at that meeting. And our intent today is to get your preferences on these, get some direction from the board on what your preferences, what you think the important points are for these items, and so that we can take those to the administrators on February 22nd, sort of winnow the field, so to speak, to get some closure on some of these items. So with that introduction, let me have Eric and Mike get up and talk through these items in some more detail. And we're looking at this as a mini workshop, so to speak. So please, if you have questions along the way, go ahead and interrupt them.
Eric, if I may start real quick. The reason we're both up here is because you may have questions that may relate to one of us, and Pat Luce is over here too. He did a lot of the programming. He may chime in, so I'm going to let Eric go through the presentation and ask any questions you may have from time to time. And if I sense anything happening on here, I may interrupt him too to have some more discussion. Go ahead.
Thanks, Mike. Good morning, Eric Grau with Stantec. So just kind of recap what Mr. Coates just explained to you guys. We're gonna, the way I envision this presentation going is, we'll go topic by topic. I'll give a recap of what was presented at the January 9th professional staff meeting. Kind of run through our takeaways from that meeting, and then we're seeking guidance from you guys with respect to that February 22nd administrators meeting. And just to refresh your memory, the intent of these funding options is to generate or establish dedicated funding sources for future infrastructure, and also potentially downsizing of future base rate charges through the leveraging of reductions in debt to stabilize future base rate charges. So starting with the system development fees, there were two that we looked at. I'll start with the water supply development fee. Based upon the immediate 10 years of the authority's 20-year capital needs assessment, we identified kind of two groupings of water supply capacity expanding projects. One group of projects that would add incrementally about 3.5 MGD, and a second set that would add about 13.5 MGD, for a total of 17 million gallons per day of incremental water supply capacity. Based upon the costs, the preliminary costs in the CIP budget we were provided, assuming approximately half of that being grant funded, we identified about $118 million of funding need over the 10 years for new infrastructure needed to provide the 17 MGD of water supply. And so dividing our $118 million by our added capacity of 17 MGD, assuming 250 gallons per day as a level of service standard, which is an assumption, we come up with a preliminary fee of approximately $1,740 per equivalent residential unit.
Let me interrupt you there.
Yes.
Is it 250 gallons a day in our 4 counties?
No, it's different amongst the different counties.
But on average, isn't it? Is it less than that?
It was approximately 250.
Okay.
What I recall. And so you may recall from when I presented back in December, we're showing on this slide here is a screenshot of a portion of the dashboard to the authority's financial planning model. And the blue, rather, let me back up. We have the ability to compare 2 scenarios side by side. The first scenario, we'll call our status quo scenario, so if nothing changes, that's represented in the green, both green rows and green bars down in the charts, and then, or in the tables, and then the blue represents newer scenario. The only difference between these scenarios is based upon the growth projections preliminarily that we have programmed in the model, what the cumulative impact by 2028 might be if this one fee went into effect. And if you look at the bottom right table, you can see that there would be less future financing required, as it would be offset by the revenues collected via the system development fee, and that the impact to the monthly charges to each member by fiscal year 2028 would be a reduction ranging between 4 and 5% for each member.
Here, I might point out that at the end, in 2028, by the time you get there, the increases will be greater. They'll be the 10, the 9, the 8 in that instant year. That averages over the 10-year period, so that's important to note that by the time you get there, it's a significant difference.
Yep, and if you follow the trend, one could assume that beyond 2028, the reductions would increase, all else equal. The second system development fee that we looked at was with respect to regional transmission system pipelines. Again, looking at the first 10 years of the 20-year capital needs assessment, we identified approximately $108 million of need, assuming half of that is grant funded. It's about $55.5 million of funding that's required. If we divide that by the total system capacity of the authority's entire regional transmission system, 64.9 MGD, again assuming this 250 gallons per day level of service standard, we imputed a preliminary fee per equivalent residential unit of about $215. Again, if you look at a screenshot of the dashboard of the authority's financial management plan, all else equal, implementing this one fee based upon the assumed growth in the model, we come up with a cumulative impact to the base rates by 2028 ranging between 1/4 and 2.25%. And again, that's the average over the entire period. And so by 2028, you can see that it ranges between 0.5% and just under 3%, depending on the member. And if you did both fees, it would be additive. We'd be looking at a range of approximately 4.5 to 7.5%. And so on January 9th, we met with the professional staff and their rate consultants, and per that discussion, determined that all members, the customers, currently calculate their own system development fees or capacity fees that they charge for new connections, and then remit a portion of it or recognize within the cost basis of their fees a portion that's allocable or attributable to regional projects. And so the key takeaways that we took from this meeting was that there was a general consensus amongst the professional staff that the current process provides greater flexibility at the customer level, the member level, than having the authority charge its own system development fees that would get passed through, controlled by the authority and passed through from the members to the authority. And that it would be a further benefit to the members if they also have greater foresight as to the future needs and timing of regional projects, as this would allow each member to adjust their own fees, system development fees, as necessary to fund future capital requirements, recognizing that each member has their own capital needs.
Just to weigh in there, as far as Charlotte County is concerned, commissioners, is yes, I did talk to our utility director, I talked to our administrator, and that your takeaway is correct. I mean, as far as how we've done it in the past. However, we don't really use the fees, capacity fees. We're actually having a public hearing next Tuesday to consider raising our rates. Okay, and in that, not only our CIP needs, but we have rolled in what we anticipate Charlotte County's portion of the authority's CIP would be needed. So that's how we're doing it, through the rates. And we'll see how the hearing goes. But basically, I think the concept of staying on our own, doing it our way, figuring out what, and as quickly as the authority can define the need and when they need it, it will be obviously very helpful to all the members. And so anyways, I just wanted to weigh in on that. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, to follow up on that, that's why I thought the workshop that Commissioner Dougherty suggested, and we got buy-in from all four of us, is important. I have no intention of getting ahead of my board, period, ever, in my role here. And I've stuck to that over the last 4 years. I have my personal opinion on rate indexing, which I think is probably going to be positive, because I do not want to see big jumps. But what we tie that rate indexing to is the next big question. A water system development fee and the distribution system development fee per ERU of almost $2,000 is going to be a subject of a great deal of discussion back when I get in front of my board at the right time. And I want to have follow-up discussions with our county administrator and our utilities director and his staff to just drill down and see the water capacity fees, how that's broken out, because for the most part, people believe that 100% of that goes to paying down bonds. That's not the case, but we're going to need much more detailed discussions. Anyone else for their counties? Okay, thank you. Sorry, keep going.
No worries. And to that point, the third takeaway that we had from the meeting was that a request to consider separating from the fixed monthly base rate charge the debt service component from the other non-debt fixed costs. The thinking being that it would be easier for the members of the customers to gain support for regional projects if it was clearly identified, what that component of the fixed monthly fee is, or the base rate charge that's attributable to this debt service. And so we have on this slide, similar to ones you saw earlier today, but it's just the kind of the makeup of the water rates. And if we focus on the left two kind of tables there, the base rate charge, we've identified the components of that debt cost. What would make up that portion were you to split it out from the rest of the fixed costs. And so with that, I'd like to pause and open up for further discussion on the system development fees.
Any other, I don't see any other, oh, Commissioner Dowery.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Again, as with you, I have my personal feelings. However, I personally think you're heading in the right direction, and the staff members that suggested breaking out the debt component from the base makes some sense to me. However, that would be a decision of my full board. And so that becomes another question, extrapolating down the road, commissioners, as to even after the workshop, how do we individually communicate this to our individual boards? You know, that's just something to think about today, because that will have to happen somewhere in the process before before I would vote on indexing or whatever else comes out of this discussion this morning. Thank you, sir.
Well, let's talk about that a little bit amongst ourselves here. It's the only time we get to talk about these type of things. I think our utilities director and our county administrator in Sarasota County is going to have to schedule a block of time before in a regular session of the Board of County Commissioners to explain this. The bigger question for me, we've got 4 different counties. We're going to need agreement and consensus of all 4 before we can move forward. That leads me no great leap that if all 4 don't agree, it doesn't happen. Am I correct in that?
I think so. I defer to Pat or Doug on that, but.
Yeah, anything that's in agreement with the existing document, this board can do by majority vote. Anything that would change those governing documents is a lot bigger hurdle.
Yes.
In support of what you just said, that was a basic question I had this morning. Can this be done as board policy? We're talking about, we get to the common benefit projects and how the methodology for all that. Yes.
You know, especially with your background in engineering, I hesitate to give you a lawyer answer, but I am going to have to give you a lawyer answer. It depends on the specific thing you want to do. There's a lot of latitude within the master water supply contract and your governance contract and how you do budgeting and how you charge things, but there are also some limitations. So to look at a specific proposal, we'd have to see, would we have to amend the contract, or is it something we could do under the contract?
We'll try to help you out with that.
Sure.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would suggest that Mr. Manson get together with Mr. Lehman whenever we have our workshop and come back with all of these items, and as to water policy, what would tread into the area of the master water supply agreement. So we would have that information available in our workshop. Does that sound like a plan?
Do we have consensus to that?
Yes.
I think that's a great idea. Okay, if you would continue.
So, before we move to the next point, it appeared when we met with staff and the consultants for your various organizations that everyone was pretty much in agreement that they preferred for the authority not to move forward with the system development charge. They preferred to do it the way they do it, and I tend to agree with that. If I was in their position, I may feel that way also. I do believe this breaking out, it's not a big deal to break it out of the debt service. It does help them. Actually, your consultants look at potentially taking that debt service and capitalizing it into some sort of a capacity amount in your charge. So I think it would be very helpful on a number of ways. It doesn't really change the calculation, it's just simply a presentation. So I think that is where we start on this point.
Mr. Chairman,
yes,
if I
sir.
can, some of our discussions at the utility professional staff meeting was that certainly by the documents, the debt service is part of the base cost, but it's identified in the budget. So on invoices, we would have the base cost, but can actually identify specifically this much to debt service, this much to operations. So that was our discussion, that we could easily identify it for transparency. It's already identified in the budget, but difficult to wade through and find.
So our next topic is with respect to common benefit projects, and these are projects not covered in the master water supply contract currently. The authority's practice has been to either include these types of projects as part of larger expansion projects, or for the board to approve transfers from an R&R account or operating fund to pay for these projects. And an example for reference would be the facilities improvements maintenance warehouse project. Within the immediate 10 years of the 20-year capital needs assessment, preliminarily we've identified about $25 million in need over the next 10 years, net of grants. And so with that, the authority has prepared a proposed definition for common benefit projects. So forgive me, I'm going to read this. So a common benefit CIP project is defined as any capital project of uniform benefit to authority members and customers. Common benefit CIP projects generally exceed $500,000 in anticipated cost for implementation and may include the following general types of projects: new buildings or expansion of an existing building at authority water supply facilities, relocation of existing regional transmission system pipelines due to road widening, utility conflicts, or other constraints and requirements, projects which improve the performance, enhance treatment capability, or improve water quality in the authority's water supply system, projects which bolster resiliency and reliability of the authority's water supply system, projects which promote sustainability, safety, and system security of the regional water system, projects involving major facility control communication systems upgrade, and any other project so designated by the authority board of directors.
Let me ask you a question. The third reservoir, to me, that fits squarely in that definition. Am I right in that assumption?
Yeah, I would assume so, yes.
Mr. Chairman, I guess I would disagree with that. At least the intent. A year ago when we sat down, remember when this was first proposed, I think it was the April meeting last year when we got into the tentative budget. The original concept was called I think it was the smaller common benefit projects. I think I'm correct. And it's now changed to common benefit projects, which may be the right way to go. I guess my concern is, and where I was kind of framing it a year ago, there was some logic to taking capital needs, small capital needs, relatively speaking, small capital needs at the plant site, filter covers, new maintenance building, whatever may be needed at the plant, and figuring out how to do that as opposed to with some kind of a dedicated revenue stream, as opposed to how y'all been doing it. I mean, you're grabbing from reserves or R&R or whatever to get it done. I think that was the intent a year ago. So I'm a little nervous when, again, some of these I check off as okay. Some of them, when it goes into the transmission system, I don't know that. I mean, it may be, because right now under the O&M component, I believe, we are all sort of contributing to that. So how do you transition from simply operation and maintenance into relocation because of Kings Highway line as an example? When that road gets widened, that line's going to have to be moved. So I'm still not convinced yet that that type of a CIP, that kind of a project would fall into the common benefit yet. I mean, I just wanted to throw that up.
Sure.
I would look at the third reservoir, the other things we may be doing on the plant on this site relative to intake and increasing treatment and storage. That's a large scale CIP project that I think we would have to, again, go to the more traditional way we've been doing it. That's just my opinion this morning. A lot to discuss at our workshop.
Yes.
Thank you, sir.
Mr. Chairman, if I could clarify, we intentionally took new water supply out of this. So that's a different animal from this. We even had small projects originally that could increase new water supply. We took it out of there because the water supply contract identifies how new water supply projects shall be. If we were to do a small new water supply project, the master water supply contract right now says it will be done in accordance with the existing pro rata share of allocation. So we took it out of this equation.
And Mr. Chairman, this is exactly why I think we need that clarification for the workshop, Doug, as to how these things fit in to policy versus master water supply agreement. So we know how to handle it.
Right, and common benefit projects, I did look at a little more specifically, and basically defining a subset by policy of capital improvement projects. So there's nothing that fundamentally changes the contract, but it does specify, what kind of policy you're going to apply to creating this subcategory of a capital project. Now, but as you're saying, it's a good point Mr. Lehman made. New water supply projects, which is a defined term in the agreement, must be treated a different way. And any kind of upgrade to uprating to our facility has a specific provision for that. And those things were not included in the list of common benefit projects.
Thank you. Thank you, sir.
Okay.
So I stand corrected on my answer, sorry.
And so, we're seeking policy for sustained funding sources for these types of projects. And so, so one suggestion that's been made is to consider at least $1 million initial funding that would be annually indexed. Now, if we took the $25 million that we've identified as cost over the next 10 years, that comes out to about $2.5 million per year of cost with a funding source of only $1 million. The second consideration would be possibly a revolving line of credit that could be used to supplement the need from year to year. It's not going to be a steady need each year, so this would help avoid the rate shock that could occur from cash funding all of these projects as needed. And so on January 9th, we presented 4 potential allocation options of the debt associated with a revolving line of credit. Just to recap what those options were that were discussed, we said, first, what if we allocated based on each customer's population? Well, under such a scenario, Manatee County, who currently does not take water, would have a 37.4% allocation of common benefit projects. The second option we looked at was, okay, what if we just, it's common, so what if we just allocate it evenly to each of the customers, 20%? Again, it's a similar dynamic for Manatee, and Northport wouldn't be too thrilled with that because they would have only 7% under option 1, it would increase to 20% under option 2. Option 3 says, what if it's allocated based on regional water use? Well, we can see that under that scenario, Charlotte and Sarasota counties would combine for over 90% of the cost of a common benefit project. And the fourth option was, what if we allocate based upon master water supply reserve capacity allocations? And again, under such a scenario, Charlotte and Sarasota would be over 90%, and under options 3 and 4, Manatee would be at 0%. The conversation ultimately kind of ended with, I guess, support to pursue further discussion on these allocations and possibly look at a hybrid approach, much like the member contribution, which, as Ann explained previously, is calculated 50% on population and 50% equally across each of the customers.
And just before I turn it over to Commissioner Dougherty, I would just ask you to relook at that option number 1, because Sarasota's population is bigger than Manatee's, so that sort of perhaps reversed it. And whenever we get into population discussions, I think it's important that we know where your source is. Is it the U.S. Census updates, or is it Beaver, or is it the state projections? Because some of them have missed significantly. But that option 1 just needs to be adjusted.
Yeah, I think Sarasota has netted out of it Northport. And so
then maybe that was it. Okay, that makes, okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't want to speak for you, but option 2 looks really good for Sarasota and Charlotte.
Yes, I would agree. I would agree.
I would actually, though, having I understand. Looking at the
Northport folks are jumping up and down
Yeah,
in
I
their
know.
chairs.
Looking at this, though, I think really, again, personal opinion. My colleagues over there in Murdoch haven't weighed in on this, but I think there's merit really to all four options, really, in some way. And mathematically, I think it'd be interesting to, if that's what the term hybrid was all about, I think personally, I would like to see some effort put into that. I think population has value, the ownership component or customer relationship has validity to it, water use and contract allocations. I think all of those are valid to look at, but not individually as the final solution. I think if we look at them together in some sort of a mathematical relationship, these bright minds around here can figure that out, but I'd be interested in looking at that. Thank you, sir.
Anything else? Yeah, I think if there's a way to merge them, just to give us that number, because it takes into account these individually aren't fair in certain instances, but collectively, if that's what you meant by hybrid, as Commissioner Dougherty said, that may make ultimate sense.
So the third topic was with respect to partnership projects. These would be, for instance, like the city of Punta Gorda Internet. Historically, these projects have been treated on a case-by-case basis, and so what we're looking for is we're seeking policy for implementing the authority's strategic plan. And so if you have these, for instance, real life example, City of Venice is requesting interconnection to the authority. How is that going to look? Would it be a contractual arrangement for interconnection between Venice and the authority, or would it be between Venice and one of the members? What kind of fee might there be if no water is taken, but just to interconnect? Would there be some kind of standby fee or availability charge? And what costs would make up those charges? And so you may recall last time I presented in December, kind of presented a simple example of how a quote-unquote standby fee or availability charge might look. And we broke down fixed costs into, because whether you take water or not, there are fixed costs the authority has to fund. And so if we look at non-debt fixed costs, it's about $12.7 million for 2020 is what we're projecting. So if we divide that out by the 34.7 million gallons per day of total reserve capacity, that would generate about $1 per 1,000 gallons of capacity. Then we looked at what if we look at just a debt component, and based upon approximately $10.1 million divided by 34.7 gives about 80 cents. So we're looking at it combined if you included both debt and non-debt fixed costs as a cost in the basis. We'd be looking at about $1.80. And that would translate to offsetting revenue to all of the other customers of approximately $35,000 per year. And that would be allocated proportionally based upon reserve capacity allocations. Under such a fee, would a member such as Manatee be required to participate in this? And if they did, which costs would we include? Probably not any debt-related cost components. So it would be the non-debt fixed costs only, or just the $1 out of the 180. But then have a non-member would pay the total $1.80 per 1,000 gallons. So with that, we're seeking further direction as to how to proceed.
Well, let me see if my memory is serving me well. When we did the Punta Gorda last year, it was clear from member discussions that that was all gonna be on them and Swiftmud and take it through the state, and we participated just to get them through the process. Am I correct in that, Pat?
Yeah, the authority negotiated directly with the city. The question being now is, like we said, that we have Venice, which is located right across the street from an authority pipeline. If we interconnect, should it be through our member that deals with us and then supplies to the city, or should the city deal directly with the authority? There's going to be situations on US 17 with the pipeline we're building going through Charlotte County. There's a private utility that routinely asks if they connect. Should they connect directly to us? Should they go through the member? If so, how should those costs be appropriated? We're into the situation now where the authority has capacity. So like on the US 17 pipeline, it's 100% authority capacity. How would the authority get reimbursed for that capacity? There's other situations where the member has 50% of the capacity, the authority has 50% of the capacity. How would that new capacity be reallocated? So there's lots of questions, and we're not expecting all the answers today. We're just laying out the questions so that you get a feel for the situation.
And one second, Commissioner Dougherty. The other thing is, if there's going to be cooperative funding from Swiftmud, based on how we do it, do we lose the opportunity of stress and regional by doing certain one-off, direct, one-on-one? And I wouldn't want to see us losing that, Commissioner Dougherty.
Yeah, and again, I see this as something that, we can mention our opinions this morning, but I think, again, the workshop is going to become critical on this. It kind of integrates again into the common benefit project discussion as to, if the denominator changes, Pat, in other words, you have this option 2 in common benefit, where you have the members plus a customer on that option 2. If the authority had additional customers, then the denominator increases. The numerator stays the same, so it's a benefit to all of us who are here right now. However, there's some simplicity to the concept, I guess, of each member sort of being a broker for their municipalities. There's some logic to that, but that's more billing at the home front. There's other aspects administratively that I just couldn't answer today. So I think, again, on your list of to-dos for the hopeful workshop before April 3rd, I think that becomes an important component. Thank you, sir.
Anyone else? Okay.
All right. Finally, we want to introduce one new topic for discussion. That's with respect to annual rate indexing. Benefits of rate indexing would be, first and foremost, avoiding future rate shock due to cost inflation. And then secondly, it's viewed positively by the municipal rating agencies. Commonly used indices, a lot of people go to the US CPI, Consumer Price Index. In most people's minds, that seems to range between 2.5% and 3%. For the last 5 to 10 years, it's been at 1.5%. The second type of index is the US CPI Water and Sewage Maintenance Series. Now, US CPI is really it's made up of a basket of over 200 different indices. One of those indices being the Water and Sewage Maintenance Series, which is it measures a change in utility bills from year to year across the country. Over the last 5 to 10 years, that's been between 4.1 and 5.2%. So we're looking between these two US CPI numbers between 1.5% and 5.2% a year. A third type of rate indexing, which probably is from my experience most common, would be a flat annual indexing by some acceptable rate of increase within the community. So like I said, most people have in their minds US CPI being around 3%. Well, we tend to see between 3 and 5% as kind of a steady state type of rate increase. One example I found this morning in the city of Tamarack, around the East Coast, they they have in their ordinance that they will each year adopt the greater of US CPI water and sewerage maintenance series or the recommended rate adjustments per their annual or biannual rate study updates. So if the need turns out to be bigger than whatever the water and sewage maintenance series is, they'll default to the greater end. So what components of the rates might be considered for indexing? We want to suggest the usage rate, 74 cents per thousand gallons. That has not increased for the last 7 years, as well as the non-debt portion of the fixed O&M. And we'll open it up for discussion.
Well, just to expand on one point that Eric brought up, doing this for many years with utility clients like yourselves, each one of you are different, and an index maybe won't apply. So when we look at a 5 or 10 year forecast of what your needs are, we may say that Sarasota County needs a certain percentage increase and somebody else needs a certain percentage increase. When we do this for the authority, we can also look on an annual basis, what level of increase do we need to do based upon your projected needs here in the authority with regards to all these costs to be financially sustainable over that time period. And if that turns out to be 2.5%, maybe that's what it is. If it turns out to be 3.5% or 4%, maybe that's what it is. And you could adopt that as a specific number, maybe to be reviewed annually or semi-annually to see if it still makes sense as you move progressively through time. Sometimes when you have an index, the index may be woefully lower or even extremely higher than your needs are, and therefore might not be the way to go. So anyway, that's just often some of my experience on that.
Well, I think from all of us, you gave us an awful lot to think about. I think we do need a workshop. I think we talked about that. I need to spend an awful lot of time with Pat and with the utility director for my county and the county administrator, and you all did a great job. You all used to be my competitor going back 5 years ago for the previous 20. So I never before have given you Stantec a compliment, but you did a great job. I will tell you that I found Ann's discussion a lot more pleasing to me, possibly because I understood so much more of it, but you did a great job. And thank you for being patient with sometimes our pointed questions. You did a great job.
Thank you very much.
With that, unless we have any other questions on this, we're on the general counsel's report.
Mr. Chairman.
Whoops, I'm sorry.
I'll just take a step back to scheduling and then throw some thoughts out to you as far as workshops and all this and that. We have a administrators meeting set for February 22nd where we will discuss with your staffs, inclusive of the utility staffs, these issues and what we've heard today. Our next board meeting is April 3rd. Our governing documents call for a tentative budget by May 15th. We also have a board meeting at May 29th. Now, we could, I'll look at general counsel, the May 15th deadline for a tentative budget, if the board were to choose to push that to the 29th.
Typically, we'd have our meeting beforehand, but as a policy matter, even though that's in the interlocal, to be able to have it 14 days later, the only one could object would be, our member governments, which are you all. So the idea is that we can push that back to later in the month based on our meeting schedule.
Sure.
So that would leave April 3rd as a potential for us, if it's easier to schedule, to have a long workshop. You've had the benefit of talking to your administrators and what was discussed at that meeting. You also have the opportunity then, I know some of you have more difficulty than others trying to get on your own board agendas for a time slot. So that would give you the month of April and May to get on to your respective boards to have discussions, what would come out of an April discussion.
Makes a lot of sense to me.
Yes, that's fine. That's fine.
All right, we'll go on that because I know schedules are tight to try to get the board together in a workshop outside of that would probably have difficulties. But this would provide you the opportunity to have proper discussions with your staffs, your boards. So.
Perfect. Very good.
Thank you.
Mr. Manson, Peace River Facility, Cooperation Settlement Agreement update.
Yep, the status is the settlement is fully executed and in effect. We had our last petitioner sign off on the settlement in the city of Bartow on January 22nd, 2009. The next step is that the Water Management District at their February 26th meeting will take up the modification of the permit that all the parties agreed to. So technically, the settlement is all signed and sealed, but it's all contingent, of course, on the board issuing the permit as we propose. At the last governing board meeting here in Sarasota, the general counsel for the for the district stated that they were going to recommend the changes that were in the settlement to the permit at the meeting on the 26th. So obviously, governing board has to vote and approve, but we're not anticipating any difficulties in getting that done. Once that's done, the settlement is fully in effect and goes forward. We have some pending talks and a draft interlocal between ourselves and the co-op and potentially Lakeland that we are working out. We're just waiting for some language to come back from them. They did a draft at their last meeting at the co-op. They're going to bring it up again at their their March 20th meeting. And then at that point, we'll have something for our April 3rd meeting to consider entering into. And this is more, I'm not going to say it doesn't have anything to do with the settlement. It's not a requirement of the settlement. This is to build cooperation going forward to avoid what we ran into here, and also to share resources on the protection of the Peace River. If we're both going to rely on it potentially as water supply, then it would make sense that we'd work together to protect it and make sure that we can optimize the withdrawals without harming the environment. That's all I have.
Yep.
You ready for motions?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, move approval and authorize the chairman to execute the Peace River Cooperation Interlocal Agreement.
Second.
Oh, we don't need that yet
Sorry.
today. I'm sorry.
I thought it was on here.
It was, but I got
know,
pulled.
but we were anticipating having it for this meeting, but it got held up. I apologize. I should have made that clear.
Okay.
So we're
I'll
still
hold
waiting
that.
for a draft from them, my fault. So we will be able to take it up at the April 3rd meeting. That's when we'll have the proposed interlocal back. Sorry, I couldn't meet the schedule for that. And we've got the settlement already approved, and like I said, everything is a little off schedule, but we're going to get it back on schedule at our next meeting.
Perfect. All right, Mr. Lehman, a legislative update and your executive director's report.
Yeah, just to give you a quick update, we have attended all 4 county delegations. I've also been to Tallahassee. Representative Grant is sponsoring our $1 million request for the continuation of the partially treated ASR project. Senator Albritton will be sponsored on the Senate side. Also, we recently got a letter from the DEP that I'm proud to say Richard and his gang will receive the 2018 Drinking Water Operations Excellence Award at the upcoming seminar that they have scheduled for actually here in Punta Gorda on February 18th. So certainly kudos to the fine operations and maintenance continue. Thank you.
Anything else?
Nope, that'll do it. Thank you.
With that, we have our routine status. We have our routine status reports in our documents. Any, starting with Commissioner Trace, any commission member comments?
Not today.
No, sir.
All right. And nothing here. I have no new speaker cards. Anyone here wish to speak? Mr. Ross.
Thank you. The cat's out of the bag. We're having barbecue. So I just wanted to stand up and say that this barbecue is at least partially sponsored by the Friends of Peace Water, which is an educational nonprofit. And if this meeting hasn't been education enough, we're giving tours of the water plant in addition afterwards. So I just wanted to make sure that the public knows that this barbecue is open, and we hope everybody will come and enjoy the full pork that the gentlemen that were up here before are providing. So thank you.
Perfect.